The Human Loop podcast, powered by Ethereum. Hey, and welcome to this week's roundup of The Human Loop. In these short episodes, what I'm going to aim to do is I'm going to aim to look at everything that is being published in the world of HR, the world of business leadership, and importantly, the other dynamic in the human loop in the world of AI. And there are 5 stories that I'm going to talk about today that I think are valuable for all of us that have caught my eye. So 5 different stories, same conclusion. And the conclusion this week is that AI tools alone aren't going to solve anything. That actually leadership capability is the bottleneck. And that organizations need systems that combine technology with cultural intelligence to drive actual behavioral change. So we're still coming back to behavioral change. And it's not necessarily about better software. It's about having better managers, better leaders, supported by intelligent systems. So I'm gonna walk through the 5 different stories that I've got here that I've done the research on. And the first one is basically about workplace innovation, and that it's organizational, not technological. So the source from this, I'm gonna give you the source, and we will put the sources in the show notes as well, so that you can go away and do your own reading around this also. So look, Paylocity. This was published on the 4th of December, 25. So basically what they found was that workplace innovation is no longer a technology initiative. All right. So it doesn't live under the CTO necessarily. It's actually an organizational one. And that's actually come from Paylocity's senior director of leadership. And what they found is that the winners are combining 3 things. All right. So when we look at workplace innovation, the winners are combining these 3 things: human capability, responsible use of AI, and cross-functional leadership. And so what they actually found was that you can't buy your way out of this innovation and the transformation we're going through right now with just more tech tools, right? What you've got to do is fundamentally rethink how work gets done. And what they come back to in this article is that actually the key, like linchpin or the fulcrum in this is your managers. It's your managers and leaders. So those 3 things, again, like human capability, responsible use of AI, and cross-functional leadership, that came up as one of those key stories this week. The second story is that leadership development has jumped to the number 1 priority for HR. All right. And this source comes from SHRM's 2025 State of Workplace. All right. And it's been reported in Fortune, as well as some other well-known publishers as well. And what it's showing is that leadership and manager development has rocketed from 7th place to become the top priority for over 51% of CHROs. All right. So CHROs, HR directors, in 2025, leadership and management development has gone from 7th previously up to the number 1 priority. And that just speaks to that first article as well. Meanwhile, recruiting, which was number 1 last year, has fallen to 7th. So actually, maybe going into 2026, what we're looking at is actually how can we do more with the people we've got. And we know from experience, I know from experience, and you'll know from experience, that actually your team leaders, your frontline managers are the key to unlocking how you can do much more within your business with the people you've got. So there's a direct flip there. The focus, like what are they focusing on? What are these CHROs focusing on? Remember, it's 51%. So we still got 49% that have, other agendas that are at top for them. But these 51%, they're talking about human skills. They actually say soft skills, but I don't like to use the phrase soft skills. So human skills, things like inspiring workers, managing conflict, and number 1 for them, engaging their teams. And we'll talk more about that as we go through this episode. So what does this translate for us? Well, the war for talent has shifted from hire better people to develop better managers that can get more productivity and more performance out of those people. So there's an interesting shift there. Story 3, it was all about like the AI silicon ceiling. So leaders are using AI now. It's really interesting that while 75% of leaders and managers are using Gen AI regularly, only 51% of frontline employees do are. And so they're calling that the silicon ceiling. So there's lots of investment going into leaders attending conferences, attending webinars, getting educated on how to use Gen AI, but it is not cascading down through those businesses at the moment. So the killer stat is that employee sentiment about Gen AI goes from just 15% positive to 55% positive when they have strong leadership support. So in your organization, if you are not engaging your teams and educating them and giving them the tools and the why and the education on how to use Gen AI in their day to day, then actually, the sentiment, the impact you're going to have is just going to be kept at that C-suite level. All right. And actually that you've got that AI silicon ceiling they're coining. And so employees who get 5 hours of training are significantly more likely to actually use these tools. So what we think about, I guess, our teams tinkering with AI and using ChatGPT and Copilot, if we've got professional Copilot licenses and Claude, etc., is actually we need to take a really structured approach with this. And we're seeing this with Ethereum, with the businesses that we're onboarding for our pilots in January and the businesses that we're talking to on the wait list. A lot of what we're doing up front is helping those managers, those HR directors, those managing directors understand how, or the education level about what Gen AI can actually do for those managers and their team members within the business first. There's a bit of consultancy work that we're doing, but that's really important. So the takeaway here is that AI tools really without leadership support and training are basically expensive shelfware, they're calling them. So there's a couple of phrases there that I love, like this AI silicon ceiling and expensive shelfware. Nobody wants expensive shelfware. Story 4 is that CEOs are going quiet and strategic on social media, which I thought was a really interesting story to come out. So this comes from Korn Ferry's Top Leadership Decisions of 2025 report, which was published recently. And it said that 52% of companies say their CEO was less vocal in 2025 compared to previous years. So why are CEOs retreating from an internal comms perspective? Well, they think that the reason is a backlash from employees, customers, and stakeholders. And so CEOs think that speaking up carries a real risk right now. When they do post on social media, they've shifted from trying to be everywhere to be really, really purposeful. So they're looking to attract talent or reach customers, those two areas. So what does this mean for us as leaders? Actually, that's really, really interesting that 52% of companies are saying their CEO was less vocal, but more targeted on attracting talent and reaching customers. That's probably going to translate to actually those strategic focuses within the business are about, talent and how we get the best out of our talent and improve that employer value proposition, that EVP, but also really focused on actually speaking to their customers, which arguably I think they probably should have been doing anyway, rather than just posting about, a big win or something. So really this is about judgment, about how and when to use social media as a leader. And then story 5 just keeps coming back. And this is the burnout engagement paradox. And this comes from DHR, their global 2026 workforce trends. That was published in early November, but just is so important when we think about how we can support and develop our teams from that human loop perspective. And so 83% of workers are experiencing burnout. So essentially that's flat year on year. We were talking about 80 to 82% last year. It's crept up. But what's changed is burnout impact on engagement. All right. So here's what's changed. Burnout's impact on engagement, according to this study, jumped from 34% to 52%, meaning it's hurting productivity way more than it's used to. Now, that is huge. So what's burnout? Well, we probably need to define burnout, and defining burnout for me is going to be, you've got people who are overwhelmed, they feel disillusioned, they don't feel like they're able to do meaningful work that matters. They're feeling stressed. We can see burnout in lower engagement scores now, increasingly so, but also we can see it in poorer decision making, more sick days, and more regrettable attrition ultimately in our businesses. Interestingly, here the gap is generational. 61 to 62% of associates or entry level employees say burnout reduces their engagement, versus just 38% of C-suite leaders. So there's a Gen Z play here as well, that actually, if your workforce and your team members, there's a significant element of them who are Gen Z, then this is really, really going to begin to hurt productivity, performance, and bottom line. And get this, all right, the tech sector maintains 78% engagement despite high burnout. And the reason for this is a real focus on culture in those businesses over the recent years. But only 36% of all organizations that were studied feel their culture is well defined. So 78% tech sector is an outlier, but 36% of organizations overall feel that their culture is well defined. And for me, having spent 20 years in the people and talent space and thinking about the human loop, got a fantastic opportunity today to really amplify how we can share our mission, vision, values, and culture, and weave that into the tapestry of how we communicate as an organization and how we work day to day. So there's a real kind of risk reward opportunity there for those businesses that are leaning in to using products like Ethereum that really kind of orchestrate your cultural alignment in how managers are behaving and how they're leading their employees on those businesses that just aren't at all. So look, what's the connecting thread here? Like, leadership capability is the bottleneck. We are not doing enough as business leaders to really focus in on that area. Globally, CHROs are screaming about this for 2026. It's their number one priority. It has overtaken hiring as a priority. And so one of my hypotheses is for what we're going to see in 2026 is I think we're going to see a real focus on businesses globally thinking about actually how can we do more to support the talent in our teams to drive that productivity, increase well-being, engagement, and reduce burnout. And then think about who else do we need to add to the team sheet? Because it's expensive to hire people, it's expensive to lose people. It's much better value to develop and improve the people you've got already in your organization. And I believe that HR directors, heads of learning and development, and a lot of CHROs are beginning to cotton on to the cost savings of investing in this area, but also the downstream implications that trickle down to the bottom line. All right, so those are five key stories that through our analysis have been hot in the press this week. I will be recording one of these episodes every week. As I said, all of the citations, the references, the stories will be in the show notes for this episode. Thank you so much for listening to this news update of what's going on within the human loop world. And I will keep these coming if they are useful to you. Thanks a lot.